Oh, you here? Okay, go for it, Tom.
Hello, sir. It's nice to meet you. How big do you think user influence has changed the environment of the pharmaceutical industry?
Unfortunately, a lot. I think that one person's actions should not be influencing a whole industry's procedures and policies, but it has, unfortunately, for me. I think people, drug companies still price drugs at high prices, but they're a little more wary to do so. And certainly repricing has basically all but vanished. You'd have to be insane to reprice a drug now, even though it was common practice in the past. And like I said, it was sort of beneficial, as weird as it sounds, it was sort of a beneficial practice because you tended to get a lot of attention on a disease. You got to get better supply chain. You got to get better virtually everything. Profits certainly for the drug company that could be reinvested into further drugs. All of that was sort of pretty good, I think. And now you sort of have taken that away, or at least I, in some ways, have taken that away, which is really unfortunate because there are still plenty of drugs like that gallstones drug I mentioned earlier that are at risk of being discontinued or at risk of stockouts or whatever, or just need more research that profits do provide an incentive for. So it's a shame, and I kind of regret giving the drug industry yet another black eye because it has plenty of black eyes from things like erectile dysfunction to ADHD overprescribing to certainly the opioid crisis. The drug industry has a lot of sins, and I think adding to that list was not something I'm proud of. Even though I support the drug industry, I support capitalism, I support what I did. I still am not happy that it's had this impact. I think that it's a shame that the drug industry gets so much shit when it's an industry that's contributed greatly to reducing cardiovascular disease, to reducing oncology, and cancer sort of outcomes, or improving them, I should say, pretty dramatically in the case of diseases like CML, multiple myeloma, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, even some cancers, solid tumor cancers like lung cancer. Really, a lot of people I know that wouldn't be here without the drug industry, especially for rare diseases like cystic fibrosis and spinal muscular atrophy, which used to be uniformly fatal, and now both are more easily treated. So really a great industry. I mean, what industry can you say does that? Certainly not the media industry, which tends to point a finger at everybody, and certainly not the food industry, which doesn't really care too much about nutrition. You have a lot of industries with a lot of sort of bigger targets, in my opinion, should be on their back than pharma. Of course, pharma doesn't get everything right, but in general, it's I think a pretty good industry. And again, I would have no problem shitting on it right now if I felt like it should be shit on. I'm a pretty honest person, and I still believe that with science can come really great strides in helping people. Again, not perfect industry, but pretty close to it, if you ask me. So anyway, I do think pharma has changed a lot because of my actions. I don't think that's a good thing. I think it's a defensive, closed-minded reaction. It hasn't changed that much, though, with respect to people are still researching medicines for important diseases. Of course, that's not changed. That'll never change. But whether or not people can be non-traditional, I think you've seen kind of this more woke kind of we have to be careful what we do and say because look what happened to Shkreli. That is certainly something I've noticed. Which again is a shame because the pharma industry should have room for younger people. In my case. People who sometimes say and do dumb things, which happens in every industry. And right now it's sort of this very careful industry because it's a very profitable business. And with those profits kind of comes this weird social responsibility, which I don't think, I guess that's one controversial thing I think I'll say, is that I don't think companies have too much social responsibility. And that's something that Vivek Ramaswamy also says, who's young pharma entrepreneur. And he's railed against it in his book, Woke Inc. And I think most of that social responsibility that companies sort of pretend and act like they care is mostly just little checks that they write out in press releases when pharma actually does care. They make drugs by spending billions of dollars and change outcomes by increasing people's livelihood or their ability to survive a terrible illness. that's real change, and that's real community, benefit, as opposed to sort of the woke kind of like, well, we were there, we wrote $100,000 check when George Floyd died. That's not going to change anything. At least the problem that you think is a problem, that's not going to fix that. That's not going to fix racism in America, if you believe that that's the problem. But people wrote those checks anyway, regardless, because if you don't, you're not, you're sort of, potentially at risk for not having done that. So there's all this kind of woke BS that happens that, again, you may believe that the George Floyd situation and racism in America is extremely important. Perhaps you do. And there's nothing wrong with that. But writing the check, at that time for that reason, to me is sort of it's sort of virtual signaling that doesn't actually change the problem. And I think those companies admit that, right? That they know that, they're not going to fix racism with a check. So why do it? Well, it's to show them that, say in the case of Starbucks or whatever, that their brand stands for something, that their brand stands for against this injustice. But what does coffee have to do with racism? It doesn't make much sense to me.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and so you tend to see that kind of thing increasingly happening, where companies are posturing for what they want to be sort of perceived of and absolved for, and you see this a lot with United Healthcare, which is the biggest insurance company in healthcare, which sort of perplexes me because United is kind of a dirty business, and they've made themselves into somehow one of the most respected companies according to these surveys. And one of the reasons is they do a lot of these donations. Anytime something bad happens, United Healthcare is the first with a check. But the checks are not huge, and their profits are. So it's sort of like really sneaky to me to do stuff like that. It's nice to support, communities with your profits, but, it's also sort of disingenuous if you're sort of covering up for a business you're not proud of in the first place, or you think people can assault that business so that you're sort of making up for it by writing these checks. So I don't know. To me, it's a very weird thing that there's this corporate sort of benevolence and corporate gifting that when did this become the job of companies? I don't like it very much.
Okay, thank you, Solomon. Next up, we have AK. AK, as soon as I can unmute you, you're up, okay? There you are, okay. Go for it. AK? Oh, wait, no, I think I'd actually unmuted the wrong person. Okay, that's on me. 1 second.